All right, let's go to our tight end rankings now. This, to me, Dalton, was a pretty hard position to get a top 5 for, but why don't you count us down from your top 5 tight ends right now in the 2024 draft?
Yeah, the top 2 were easy. Brock Bowers, the GOAT college tight end.
Yep.
I think we've said enough about Brock Bowers for the last 6 months to know he's the best one. Jatavion Sanders is clearly second here. I think it was easy. I was so impressed with his ability to catch balls that were outside of his frame. Like, Quinn Ewers is not the most precise thrower in the country, and Sanders made every catch look easy.
Yep.
He can beat you up the seam. As good, he's very much like where Bowers is kind of this new age yak, kind of George Kittle tight end. Sanders is very classic, but he's really, really good. The rest of this is where it was hard. This took a lot of digging, and I came out of it most impressed next with Ben Sinnott from Kansas State. Really versatile, better athlete on tape than I thought he was. A 6-sport athlete, Max. This is something I learned watching his presser at the Combine. Football, baseball, track, golf, tennis, and hockey. He actually played hockey his entire life until he was like 18 or 19. So just a really versatile athlete, a guy. You see him in line, you see him in the slot. He's a solid route runner, plays some fullback. Like, I think I can't imagine Kyle Shanahan wouldn't look at this guy and all the things he could do and pick him up. Just rugged, physical, and fundamentally sound. I think Ben Sinnott jumped out third for me. Cade Stover, fourth. I love Cade Stover. I think anytime he was involved, especially with the ball in his hands at Ohio State, something good happened. I think he's a lot like Sinnott, with just maybe like a quarter step less athleticism. But I like Cade Stover. Like, a lot of these guys I like to put together team fits and where they would fit the best. I think Cade Stover, any of the 32 teams could take him. And he's immediately your tight end too, and he's just a good football player. It's kind of hard to describe it any way other than that. Like, he can catch the ball, he can block some. He's got over 500 special team snaps in his career. Cade Stover is going to go somewhere and do good things. And 5 was the hardest because there's probably 5 or 6 guys, and this isn't the deepest tight end class. But I went with someone who's a little bit different, Jaheim Bell from Florida State. I think he can do things with the ball in his hand that nobody outside of maybe the top 2 guys in this draft that can do. He is small. He's not going to block a whole lot, but that's also at less of a premium in the NFL now than is, what you can do with the ball in your hands. He's as good after the catch maybe as anyone other than Brock Bowers in this draft. He's weird for sure. I think he's more in like the Delaney Walker, Jonnu Smith even. I thought about Jonnu Smith a lot when I was watching his tape where, like, he's a weapon. Like, don't ask him to do things he's not good at and, like, block in line and do all that. Like, he's more weapon than actual tight end. He's just getting lumped in with the tight ends because that's just the label. But I think Jaheim Bell's a real weapon in the passing game that could help somebody.
Yeah, I really hated leaving off Jaheim Bell. I was just worried about that size. And again, like, he fits a very specific type of role. I think you said it really well, like Delaney Walker, Jonnu Smith type. Like, only a finite amount of offenses actually have that kind of tight end in their system. So that's why I love him too, man. I really do love his tape, especially when you go back to South Carolina days. I mean, he was taking handoffs. He was like their leading rusher one year, I think, as well. So I really like the athleticism he has, and I like what he does after the catch. But it's just projecting to the NFL is where I had some struggles with him. So he would have been number 6 for me, but I just barely left him out of the top 5. My top 5, obviously, Brock Bowers, number 1. We don't have to talk about him. I mean, he's the greatest tight end in college football history, like you said. Also, I mean, you can make the argument he's the best tight end in NFL draft history as well. I truly think Brock Bowers is a special player that is still probably a top 5 overall prospect for me in this draft. I think he's that good. Even in a loaded draft like this one, he is spectacular. Number 2, Jatavion Sanders from Texas. This is a pretty clear top 2 for me, I think, like you said. Sanders, I will say, Sanders was kind of billed as this elite athlete. I still think he is. I'm not going to discount that just based off the combine numbers, but he kind of tested out as kind of like an above average one at the combine, which is a little surprising to me. Again, I don't really lower him too much for that, but I was a little surprised by some of his combine numbers and how they weren't as elite as I thought they were going to be. But I have him at number 2. I think, like you said, he's a really good he made a lot of plays for Quinn Ewers that, quite frankly, Quinn Ewers didn't deserve to have made for him on some of the throws he made to him. He really was a really good player in terms of getting the ball and going up and getting it and also breaking tackles after it as well. Number 3, I had Cade Stover, actually, from Ohio State. Really good blocker. I loved his run blocking tape when I was watching him. He's a big tight end. I think, actually, Anthony Tresh has Cade Stover as a top 20 overall prospect, he was telling me, in this draft. He is in love with Cade Stover. over. I'm not quite that high. I think I would take him probably somewhere on day 2, but I liked what he did at Ohio State a lot. And also, again, his receiving numbers won't maybe jump off the page like Brock Bowers or Davion Sanders. You got to remember, man, that Ohio State receiver room with Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, guys like that, he was competing for targets with. It's tough to put up great numbers in that offense when you have those guys that are also getting targets in that offense. So I like Cade Stover a lot. I think he could even put up better receiving numbers in the NFL than he did in college. Ben Sinnott I have at number 4 as well. I think he could play fullback, honestly. Like you said, I really do. I think he probably was the second best tight end, I would say, in college football this past season behind Brock Bowers. He was fantastic, a really good athlete as well. Love what he does after the catch. Like his route running a little bit too. I like Ben Sinnott a lot. Number 5 is a Penn State guy. I'm not being a homer here. Theo Johnson, who is the best athlete, I would say, out of any tight end in this class. In fact, he's one of the best athletes we've ever seen at the NFL Combine. He tested out as a 99.5th percentile athlete according to Kentley Platt from the relative athletic score. But 4.57 40-yard dash, 1.61 10-yard split, 4.19 short shuttle, 39.5-inch vertical, 10-foot 5-inch broad jump, all at 6'6", 259 pounds. This guy is a freak athlete. I still think he's learning position though, which is why I'm a little hesitant with him. But those traits, man, don't come around often. So I would take him 3rd, 4th round probably, and I still think the agility, I don't think the route running is all the way there with him either. He doesn't really separate as much as you think for a freak athlete like that, but I like Theo Johnson enough for me to have him as tight end number 5 in this class, but I do think it's a pretty clear drop-off after the top 4 tight ends in this draft. So who is the sleeper, Dalton, that you have in this tight end class?
I really, you know what? I didn't expect this to be the guy, but I really like Tanner McLachlan from Arizona. Just solid route runner, very direct. I like his work after the catch. It's not the same as Jaheim Bell, where it's like, oh, you could give him carries. He's got shake and missed tackles, but he's very his feet are excellent from the transition from the catch point to getting directly upfield after the catch. Like, he's really a lot more fundamentally sound than I thought he was. And Arizona, look, they had Teteroa and McMillan, and they had Jacob Cowing taking a lot of targets, and Michael Wiley in the backfield for that matter. McLachlan, I think, had 55 targets on the year, I want to say, but I was impressed with darn near all of them. I just think his approach to, the receiving part of the position is as fundamentally sound as it gets. He's a solid route runner, and there's just something about him that there's no. It's kind of like I said before with Blake Corum. There's no wasted motion. He's just solid. I think he's a guy that coaches are just going to really like having around. They're like, wow, this guy's better than I thought he was. I like Tanner McLachlan a lot in the receiving game, just as a more traditional moving tight end, kind of like Jatavian Sanders, but maybe a half step off the athleticism.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I do like this year, I believe he had 0 drops this year after 6 or 7 the year before, and a lot of them were just focused and trying to turn upfield after the catch, and he really locked in on that. I think McLachlan I think he's the sleeper. He's a guy, I didn't expect him to be in this spot for me, and the more I was watching him, I was like, wow, he's just really fundamentally sound.
Yeah, I like McLachlan a lot. He was a guy that would have been on my top 10 list if he was there. But the guy I actually want to shout out here, not really a sleeper if you follow Trevor Sikkema closely, because he actually has this guy as the number 3 tight end in this class behind Brock Bowers and Jatavion Sanders. But it's Eric All from Iowa, who transferred over from Michigan. This guy has had horrible injury luck, man. He had a torn ACL this past season. He actually had minimally invasive spine surgery when he was at Michigan, which ended his season there as well. So obviously those are 2 pretty big red flags for him in terms of injuries. But his tape, man, when Trevor was kind of singing his praises on the latest episode of NFL Stock Exchange, where they ranked the top 5 tight ends, so go check it out if you haven't already. But he was, I was like, all right, let me go watch him back, and he's right, man. I really like Eric All a lot. I don't think he'd be a top 5 tight end for me like he is for Trevor, but he is a elite separator, really good after the catch, and then he's a really willing blocker, man. He's a really, really good blocker. So, again, the injury concerns are there for him, especially when you have spine surgery like that. But and the torn ACL obviously this past season. But I love what he showed at Michigan. I loved what he showed in the limited time he had for Iowa. And obviously Iowa tight ends, man, have worked out in the past before. So Eric All might be the next one, but I'm a big fan of him, man. And shout out to Trevor Sikkema for highlighting him, because yeah, he's a guy that you definitely need to keep an eye on in this draft. Again, the injuries are probably going to drop him to the day 3 of the draft, but I think he's worth a flyer, man, because I think he could turn into a starting tight end, and maybe even a good starting tight end down the line in the NFL.